Hey guys, so today we're going to go over the introduction to the earthworm dissection. So the earthworm that you're going to dissect with me digitally, virtually, is a night crawler. So if you've ever gone fishing or you've dug these up as a child in your yard, you know that night crawlers are a little bit bigger earthworms. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So I'm going to give you an intro to that, and I'm going to read to you some information so that you can have that in the back of your mind whenever we actually cut open the earthworm. So, among the most familiar invertebrate animals are the earthworms, members of the phylum Annelida. The word Annelida means ringed and refers to a series of rings or segments that make up the bodies of the members of this phylum. Internally, septa, or dividing walls, are located between the segments. There may be more than 100 segments in an adult worm. The segments are the little parts that I'll show you whenever we get close and personal with our night crawler. The clitellum is a swelling of the body found in sexually mature worms and is active in the formation of an egg capsule or cocoon. Eggs are produced in the ovaries and pass out of the body through female genital pores. Sperm are produced in the testes and pass out through tiny male genital pores. During mating, sperm from one worm travel along the sperm grooves to the seminal receptacles of another worm. Fertilization of the eggs takes place outside the body as the cocoon moves forward over the body, picking up the eggs of one worm and the sperm of its mate. The pumping organs of the circulatory system are 5 aortic arches, and the word aortic should make you think of the heart. Circulatory fluids travel from the arches through the ventral blood vessel to capillary beds in the body. The fluids then collect in the dorsal blood vessel and re-enter the aortic arches. The worm has a closed circulatory system. The earthworm takes in a mixture of soil and organic matter through its mouth, which is the beginning of the digestive tract. The mixture enters the pharynx, which is located in segments 1 through 6. The esophagus, in segments 6 through 13, acts as a passageway between the pharynx and the crop. The crop stores food temporarily. The mixture that the earthworm ingests is ground up in the gizzard. In the intestine, which extends over 2/3 of the body, digestion and absorption take place. Soil particles and undigested organic matter pass out of the worm through the rectum and the anus. The nervous system consists of the ventral nerve cord, which travels the length of the worm on the ventral side, and a series of ganglia, which are masses of tissue containing many nerve cells. The nerve collar surrounds the pharynx and consists of ganglia above and below the pharynx. Nervous impulses are responsible for movement and responses to stimuli. Each segment contains an enlargement, or ganglion, along the ventral nerve cord. Excretory functions are carried out by the nephridia, which are found in pairs in each body segment. They appear as tiny white fibers on the dorsal body wall. The earthworm has no gills or lungs. Gases are exchanged between the circulatory system and the environment through moist skin. Okay, so now we're going to look over here. So if you're curious about the phylum, the class, the family, the genus, the species, you have all that information up here. I'm not going to try to pronounce these. You can try to if you want to, but that is the information for your intro to the earthworm. So as we talked about, they are invertebrates, which means they don't have a backbone. They have a clitellum, which I will show you when we actually dissect the worm. I'll also show you the crop where food is stored. As you know, the rectum and the anus are going to be on the posterior end, which is the bottom end of the worm. The prostomium is going to be at the front, and we call that the mouth. They have 5 aortic arches, which I'll try to show you if they're still intact. Segments 1 through 6 show you the pharynx, which you should remember from your digestion studies. Segments 6 through 13 will show us the esophagus. Dorsal means top, ventral means bottom, and then another interesting thing is that they have setae, which are bristle-like spines, on every segment except the first one and the last one. So that's the end of your introduction video, and the next video you're going to watch is about the actual dissection of the worm. Alright, so we're going to start off with the earthworm. So when you come in, your earthworm will be sitting on your tray like this, especially if it's if it's shorter, it'll be like this. If it's a little bit longer, it'll be like this, and that's okay. So first what you're going to do is you're going to pick up your earthworm, and you want to look at the bottom side. The bottom side, we're going to look at a few things on that part first. So what you're going to do is you're going to locate the mouth, or the prostomium, which is at the very top. And an easy way for me to do this is I find the segment here, and then this big segment right here is what you're going to look at, and then find the shortest way to the top. That's going to be your mouth, or your prostomium, and then the longer piece right here is going to be going down to the posterior, or the anus. Now keep in mind, these earthworms have been preserved, so this one looks a little deflated. So we're going to open up the inside and look at that in a second. You're going to flip your worm over to the bottom side, and you can look and see the segments pretty clearly. And we're going to find some stuff on the bottom side before we look inside. So each one of these little rings is called a segment. So you can look at those and see how prominent they are on the bottom. There's one thing that you can't really see, but you can feel. If you take your finger and go along like this, you can feel the setae. Kind of gives some friction along your finger that you can feel through your gloves. So on the ventral side is going to be your bottom side. We're going to look at these little holes right here. So if you count down, and you don't count the first little bump right here, that one doesn't count. We're going to count the segments, and on segment 15 we will find a male genital pore. Okay, so if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Let's do that one more time. Oh, I missed one. Okay, so that's 15. So if you look at these two pores right here, that's going to be the male genital pores. These lines that you can see going from there down, those are the sperm grooves. Okay, and then we have this segment here, this long segment here, which is called the clitellum. So if you place the earthworm right side up, now you'll notice that the top is more brown than the bottom, and you can kind of think about why that's important. So earthworms are in the dirt, and if they don't blend in with the dirt, they will become dinner for something. And so you can see that the upper part is darker, and that'll kind of help us line up our top versus our bottom when we try to pin this guy. Okay, so we are going to pin him down onto our tray. So what you're going to do is you're going to pin him at the very top, which is up here. So we're going to just pin him down into the blue. And you want to kind of angle your pin so that way when you're cutting it doesn't get in your way. And then one thing that I learned is, oh, he's going to be, I'm going to pin him this way. So we're going to repin him here. Okay, and so then he's kind of a, we're going to flatten him out, try to, and you're going to pin the posterior at this side at an angle, because that makes it easier. Okay, and then since he's taut, there's no kind of, it'll make it easier for us to cut. Okay, so we're going to cut from the first part of the pin down to the bottom, and when you cut, you want to make a straight line all the way down. And these guys cut very easily. They kind of cut like you would when you heat up a knife and you run it through butter. So you want to be very careful and make sure that you don't cut any of the inside parts, because if you do, they're going to be much, much, much harder to identify. Okay, so we're going to take our scalpel and we're going to very carefully cut. I repin him here. I didn't do a very good job. Okay, we're going to cut him. Gonna get in there with our scalpel, and you want to just make a very gentle cut, as straight as you can. It's kind of a challenge, so take your time. You want to cut all the way down to the bottom. Okay, and if we didn't cut well enough, then we'll figure that out whenever we get there. I'm going to repin him so he's tight. All right, then we can take our poker and see how well we did up here. So let's kind of open him up a little bit. Oh, I accidentally cut through him. That's okay. But so you'll notice that this part between the clitellum and the mouth is a little bit more difficult to get open. So we are going to take our pins and we're going to pin this guy to where you can see him better, maybe. So when you pin, you just want to use, this is the hardest part, so when you pin him, you can start on one side and then pin the other. And I'm going to recut this up here. You have to be very, very gentle, otherwise you damage the insides. There we go. Okay, so we're going to take another pin, and we're going to pin that one. Remember, you want to pin at an angle so you can actually see the inside and you can see what you're dealing with. Alright, so you'll notice when we open them up, there's a lot of things that are the same color because earthworms are not super, super complex organisms, but they still have a lot of detail going on. So we're just going to pin him from the mouth to the clitellum, because from the clitellum down is just the extra dirt and stuff that's going to go out of the posterior. So once you see one part of that, you can kind of imagine what the whole part looks like. So let's pin him. Pin him there, and then I'll just do a little. So you can see how easy it is to cut through. I barely pushed at all, and I cut right through. So I'm going to pin him right here because you can actually see the blood vessel and the dirt he's been chewing on before he got here. Alright, so now that we have him pinned, we can see a little bit better. Now, I accidentally cut through our specimen, but I'm going to show you what's on the inside where I can, from where I can see. Okay, so we're going to start at the top. So up here, right underneath my pin would be the ganglia. So it's going to be right there, and as you can see, a lot of things are the same color, so it's kind of hard to tell, and I cut through a few things, but we're going to do our best to look. Then underneath the ganglia is the pharynx, which would be in segments 1 through 6. So it's going to be this little guy right here. Underneath the pharynx is the esophagus, and that goes from segments 6 to about 13. So that would have been right here. I think I cut through it, so we're going to do our best. But that's where the esophagus would be. Then these little darker parts right here, these are the 5 aortic arches. I accidentally cut through those guys, but you can still kind of tell that those would be part of the hearts. Okay, so that's the darker colored parts here. Then we have these bigger white pieces, which are the seminal vesicles. So these are the seminal vesicles that you would find in the worm. Underneath the seminal vesicles, you're going to have the crop, which is where the worm is going to grind and digest certain parts, the soil that he gets. Underneath the crop, you have the gizzard, which is this guy right here, thicker kind of looking, and then when you open that up, you can see, the parts of soil and whatever this guy was chewing on, not chewing on, but eating before we got him. So you can kind of look at that, use your little poker. So it looks like he was eating some little parts here, and so that's going to be your crop and your gizzard. Underneath the gizzard, this dark part right here is the dorsal blood vessel. So I cut mine, but you can kind of see the darker part. Then when you look, the ventral nerve cord is what runs all the way down on the side down to here, and next to that is going to be the intestine. So inside the intestine, you can kind of run your poker through that and see what they've been eating. He's got some white powder looking stuff here, and then once you get down here, you can see more dirt and all that he's been chewing on, going all the way down. The cord goes all the way down to the end, and the intestine goes all the way down. So that's why we're not opening up the bottom per se, because it's the same thing all the way down. So if you cut that open accidentally, that's perfectly fine. But I went through them up here. Okay, so then you can take your tweezers, and if you are able to, you can remove some of these parts. So here are the seminal vesicles. You can take out the gizzard. Look at that. You can look around up here, see the hearts. You can pull, maybe it's meant to stay in there. Okay, and just look around like that, see what you can see. There's the parts of the hearts, excuse me. Okay, so as you can see, there's not really much to it when you open it up. Once you get down here, most of the complicated parts are from the clitellum up, so that's where most of the action goes on. So these guys are very beneficial to us, but they're also very simple organisms. So you've kind of seen all that there is to see on this guy, and that's the end of our earthworm dissection show.